So he'll be, he'll be checking his emails and available by phone.
Good for him.
Yeah.
I would be warmer.
Dottie, did you just get a message that we're recording? Can you click OK in the case you got it?
I did that.
So he'll be, he'll be checking his emails and available by phone.
Good.
Okay, we're live. So good evening. Thank you for joining the Hudson 7 Drinking Water Council's hybrid monthly meeting. Today is Thursday, March 16th. My name is Rebecca Martin, and I am the Director of Community Partnerships at Riverkeeper and acting coordinator as a non-voting member for tonight's Hudson 7 virtual meeting. Before we begin, we would like to go over a few meeting guidelines and abbreviated procedures. The procedures are available in full on the Hudson 7's meeting page on their website, www.hudson7.org. The Hudson 7's meeting are recorded and streamed live on YouTube on our YouTube channel page, and a link to their page can be found on the meeting page of the website, hudson7.org. The public is advised to subscribe to this channel to receive notifications when meetings begin. The video for tonight's meeting and all of the videos, agendas, and minutes are available to the public on the Hudson 7's website. Hudson 7 council members, please mute yourself if you're not speaking to avoid background noise. And if a Hudson 7 member wishes to speak, most of you are there in the room, but if you don't mind stating your name and for any of the audio listeners. So in attendance tonight, we have Chairman Mayor Gary Bassett from the Village of Rhinebeck. Bill Carlos, the Town of Poughkeepsie. Shannon Harris, the Town of Esopus, and Secretary of the Hudson 7. Russ Gilmore from the Town of Lloyd. Devin I'll get it, Devin Rigalino.
Got it.
Thank you. From Dutchess County. Okay, let me see who else is here. One moment. Great, we have Nick Butler from the Town of Esopus, water operator on the phone. Emily Svensson is here, technical advisor for land use. Grant Jang is here from the Department of Health. And Dan Shapley is on the phone from Riverkeeper. So Gary, we have a quorum. I'm going to turn the floor over to you.
Thank you, Rebecca, and welcome everybody. Beautiful day today. All right, so minutes. I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes for 2/16. So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. So approved. Rebecca, how about leading us through the communications?
Sure. So there've been a few articles in the paper that feature the Hudson 7, the Highlands Current. Ryan calls on CSX to improve safety, where Gary Bassett, the mayor of Rhinebeck, who heads a group of 7 municipalities in Dutchess and Ulster counties that take their drinking water from the river, said the group notified CSX in 2021 of its concern about potential bridge failures that might lead to spills into the Hudson. Followed by 2 articles in the Daily Freeman. The first, Rhinebeck Village Mayor says CSX won't listen without federal pressure. Village Mayor Gary Bassett contends CSX railroad officials need to be given regulations that address frequent infrastructure problems that could easily unfold into a cascading series of problems that dwarf already catastrophic incidents. And then finally, in the Daily Freeman, Mid-Hudson town supervisors seek protections from potential train threats. Quote, tracks on the Dutchess County side are largely known for carrying passenger rail cars but there are also chemical and hazardous solid waste trips, which troubles Rhinebeck Town Supervisor Elizabeth Spinzia because her community relies on the Hudson River for drinking water. So thanks for all of your advocacy. And then one update that I just wanted to share on Class C streams, and Dan is here as well, if you might have more to say about it, but protections for Class C streams were recently included in the Senate budget. On Tuesday, the state Senate has included protections for Class C streams in their budget for negotiations with the governor in the next couple of weeks and possibly beyond if they can't agree. As you recall, the governor had vetoed Class C streams in December with a veto memo arguing the bill belonged in the budget with monetary resources for implementation. The version included in the Senate's One House budget modifies the bill to exempt soil and water conservation districts from permitting requirements if they have an MOU with the DEC outlining appropriate stream protection measures. More importantly, it includes $1 million in implementation funds to cover staff hires to implement to the DEC. So that's the update on Class C streams. Dan, I don't know if you have more to say about that.
No, just that when the mapping, I think Ulster County did some good mapping and showed that a lot of the streams that directly feed into the Hudson right in this zone that's drinking water are Class C streams. So this bill, if passed and signed, would extend better protections to them so that before any development, for instance, disturbs the bed or banks of those streams that would need a permit. So there'd be some oversight and some protections enacted that would presumably help our water supply. Thanks.
Right. Yeah, Ulster and Dutchess too, Devin, as you might have seen that you did a similar map, which are available on the Hudson Seven's website on the meeting page for anybody who's interested to see. That's it, Gary.
Thank you. Okay, the next one is the county representative update. I'd like to make a change. Since now Devin actually brought this up, I thought it was a great idea. Dutch and Ulster are now members of our, so unless there's something that they're bringing forward, which they can put on the agenda, it shouldn't be any different than us. Right? So I'd like to make, I don't know if we have to, this is not really a motion. I'd just like to say, Devin, thank you. And Amanda, I don't know, I haven't heard anything from Amanda LaBelle yet, but they're voting members. Let's just treat them as voting members, unless you have something you want to add into, it would be an agenda item to go forward. Everybody okay with that?
Good.
Yeah, good. You know, one of us.
Thank you.
All right. So, all right, is there anybody for public comment? Well, let me back up. Is there anything you do want to say, Devin?
No, as I expressed to Gary, I think that typically everything that I would have to share falls under some other action that's already on the agenda. So I'll just defer to other points on the agenda moving forward.
Very cool. All right, so we'll take that off going forward. Public comment. I don't see anybody. Is there anybody in the room, waiting room for public comment? Rebecca?
No, not tonight.
Gary, I'd like to bring up something. I had a member of the public contact our town supervisor with concerns about Indian Point dumping into the river.
Yes, I think we've all had
And
that.
we were getting a lot of that, and I just told the individual that I would mention it to make sure it was part of our conversation at some point. So.
I'll bring up a good point. Is that something that we want to address in terms of making a recommendation or not to, going forward back to that organization? I don't know if everybody understands the issue. There's I don't remember how many gallons of waste material that they've deemed that is safe to dump into the Hudson River.
Correct.
Versus
It's the water.
hauling it away.
That was in the tanks that surrounded the expended rods.
Right,
The rods are not going to be part of this. It's just the water.
correct.
That's how I understand it to be.
My understanding is it's 1,500 degrees when it goes into the Hudson, and that's what's killing all the fish and the life right around.
Right around
Indian
that.
Point. And that's raising concern with some people.
Do we know that since it's been deactivated, that it's still that hot?
I guess so. I mean, I went and looked at the site the individual was talking about, and it was like 8 hours before I heard from him, so it was recent.
So can I just interject? Tonight, there's a big webinar that Riverkeeper is hosting to discuss Holtec's plan to discharge 1 million gallons of radioactive wastewater. That's the tritium that you're talking about, Russ. And we have Richard Webster speaking tonight, as well as Michelle Lee, who is an expert and a lawyer on the impacts of radioactive materials and health concerns. So why don't I share, if you haven't registered to go tonight, it's following our meeting at 6:30. I can share the video for the Hudson 7, and it might not be a bad idea for the Hudson 7 to think about learning more about any potential impacts to the river insofar as how it impacts the intakes, which we don't have any evidence or science. Dan we've talked about this in the past, but it might be good to do some thinking about it. And if you, Gary, I think I heard you say that the Hudson 7 might want to make a statement. So maybe that's a good thing to talk through and learn more about.
That's what I asked. I asked them if the Hudson 7 wants to make a statement about this. Right? Is Riverkeeper weighing in and making a statement?
Oh, yes. Yes, we have. We want no discharges into the Hudson. That's our stance. That's our position. No radioactive wastewater discharges into the Hudson, and instead to find an alternative, like storing the wastewater on site for 12 years and find safer solutions to manage this sort of wastewater. So why don't I share these materials with the Hudson 7 and we can talk about it a little more next month?
I think that'd be nice. I think we should.
I'd be interested in watching and learning more before making a decision about whether to.
You know, it's out of our sphere of direct influence. It is the Hudson River. And so,
Right. Yeah.
all right, good thought. So we'll put that on the agenda for next month and you'll share what you have.
Yes, yep,
Okay.
happy to, yep.
Very good. All right, thank you. Okay,
May I say one thing if I'm audible? I'm not sure I have good
Yep, we
service.
hear you, Dan. You're good.
Thanks. I just wanted to say, there are advocates other than Riverkeeper that are using 7 as a talking point relative to this. I think that's maybe what Ross was referring to, having heard from people. So I have been trying whenever the opportunity arises to remind them that this is far downriver, this discharge, and even though 1 million gallons sounds like an awful lot, it's not a lot compared to the volume of the Hudson at that point, the one-time discharge. So I think I would just encourage you all, if you get concerns about it, to also try to make sure that, I'm worried that your customers will become alarmed unnecessarily. So stop it, having no discharges is better than a discharge. And I think a statement to that effect would be totally, fine and appropriate from the Hudson 7, but also to remember that the confidence of folks in their drinking water is hard to restore once it's lost, and just to make sure that we're trying to speak clearly that this is very unlikely, in my view, to be an actual risk that would be detectable in your drinking water, as far as I know as of today. Thanks.
and I think we can address that in whatever statement we make about A, our drinking water, and B, that issue. So I'd like to have that on the agenda for next month.
Great, thanks.
Okay, moving on. Russ and Shannon, you guys were tasked with coming up with the Hudson 7 next step for appointing an attorney to have us go into working with us on the 501c3.
We did. The very next day, we got together and we discussed both law firms. And Shannon and I have both had experiences with one law firm that we did not recommend. And it just seemed to us that Whalen brought a more competent staff, a direct staff that would be involved with Hudson 7, whereas possibly McCabe and Mack would farm it out. So we decided we wanted to have a firm that would be committed as a firm to helping us. Am I, guys?
Yes, well, yeah, Mackey, Butts and Whalen is who we recommended. And in particular, Kara Whalen, we hear is a very competent attorney. We could work with her, that would be ideal.
Did you want to make a motion?
Yes, I'll make a motion that Hudson 7 appoint Mackey, Butts and Whalen LLP as our attorney for choice in regards to the creation of the nonprofit.
Have a second? Bill, discussion? Discussion for everybody online?
Amanda Laval just joined us from Ulster County. Hi, Amanda.
Welcome, Amanda.
Oh, good evening, everyone. Sorry I'm late. I had another meeting and
Yeah,
was in transit, but
I share your pain. Okay, so we have a motion, we have a second to approve to hire McKay, Butts and Whalen, and the attorney's name again was
Kara Whalen.
Kara Whalen. Has anybody spoken to Karen? Have Mike come, has you spoken to Kara that if we're recommending her, she's willing and able to step up and do it?
No, we haven't reached out yet, but we're happy to make that introduction.
Cool. Are you comfortable with proceeding with this firm if this particular attorney is not able to work on this
Yes,
project?
I think so. It was just pointed out to me that she in particular is very good. But we'll ask.
She doesn't help us with the people we have to go through. She's not gonna be here at the meeting.
No, we do the process.
Good.
I mean, if she needs to come in and present it sometime. when
Or we have,
a
or there's an issue and we need to ask her. I agree with that, but to tie somebody like that up, come here.
Just so you know, in their application, when they responded to the LOI, they mentioned 3 legal personnel from the firm who would be assigned to this. It's Ian McDonald, Robert Butts, or Joshua McKay. So maybe we can circle back around and ask them about, I'm sorry, did you say Carol? Shannon?
Kara Whalen.
Carol Whalen. So she's a partner, so maybe that would be possible. So, but in their proposal, but this is back in November. So now that you've made a decision, we have to call it off, right, Gary, because of the MOU process occurring. We're doing what we were supposed to do last year, where the council selects one of the applicants, and then the next step is to set up a call with them to discuss. So we can do that and maybe make the request of Carol on that call. So you have to decide who's going to follow up with the firm.
We got to vote on this.
Okay,
Butts is a partner too, right?
I think so, yes.
Butts is a partner also.
So
Right, so we can work that out. So first off, all in favor of going forward with the recommendation to hire McKay, Butts and Whalen? Mackey.
Not McCabe.
Sure. Mackey, Butts and Whalen. Please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? So carried. So we need to set up a call. So
I'm happy to do that. Yeah,
and
I'll loop you in.
Yeah.
Okay,
then
and me and Rebecca
I'd like to be in on it.
and Gary. Okay. Okay,
All right.
would you like me to find out times that they're available and then send you all something, schedule you all based on your,
good, yes.
okay,
Thank
good,
you
sure.
so much, Rebecca.
Okay, now in that Hudson River drinking water source, proposed transmission lines, we did the communication to DDI. I've not had any feedback from them. Has anybody had any feedback from them? No. I don't think it's, I think we've done our due diligence, and unless they have questions, they can reach out. It's my opinion. And yeah, I know the town of Sopus, you guys are moving forward, right? You did have the ask if anybody wanted to join in with you. I don't know where that process is.
I know that a Sophus retained tie and bond, it was the $31,000 contract. And they're working very hard to meet the deadlines to do all this analysis. And I can share with you the very specific, what ultimately was the final version of the scope of work. If you would like to see that, we could do that. Should we do it in the form of a subcommittee meeting, or is this something I can send sort of seriatim to?
I think you can share that to any, what we've recommended is that you share that with the municipalities. And that if you, because the thought process is if a municipality wants to join in, they need to understand that scope of work, so they themselves can, can go forward and so do it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
my recommendation is that you share that with,
Okay.
including the counties.
Great.
Since they're members.
Will do.
Yeah. And then ask for feedback and opportunity,
Yes.
right? And then anybody's interested, then you keep them informed of what they want to do. They can take it forward to their boards and then decide,
Right.
right? So I think that's the process we want to go through. I'm good with that.
Fine by me.
Good. Any questions on that? All right, so then the last thing was, what we'd always work for was we would, submit recommendations to the EM and CP process. I don't think we particularly want to wait until the public comment comes out till we do that, because then things are pretty much driven. And I'd like to get in front of that. This gives the municipalities to do opportunity to do that, but also us as Hudson 7. So we had worked on, as the subcommittee, worked on a set of recommendations, which has been shared with everybody. The question is, do we want to submit them to TDI as part of the recommendations, our recommendations to EMCP at this time, or wait until this process is, each of this process is further along? It's kind of a timing thing.
Well, my understanding is you sent that communication to DDI, asking them specifically, advising them that we were doing the peer review and asking them specifically to wait on any issuance of the EMCP until we had the 6 weeks to finish the analysis, right?
Right.
Okay. So I would definitely wait until we're done with that. I think, as I said in my email, they took 4 months to deliver the pilot test to us. We could take 6 weeks, possibly 8 once we write up the report. So it'll take 6 weeks to do the analysis and another maybe 2 weeks to draft it into the form of a response and recommendations. They've been advised that we've asked them not to move forward without our feedback. So we will just hurry as fast as we can to get that feedback. In the interim, I'll send you all the scope of work that they're performing, tie and bond.
Right. But my point is, there's going to be 2 sets of recommendations possibly. The recommendation of SOPA plus what the subcommittee has already developed. They're 2 entities. I don't want to dismiss all the work the subcommittee did in terms of coming up with their recommendations either. Because they put a lot of hard work into doing what they've done as a subcommittee.
Do those include the emergency plans?
It references that emergency plans are needed, yes, but it doesn't talk about what the process is for those emergency plans.
As long as it's referred to as part 1 of a multi-part form of feedback and consultation process. This whole thing we're having with them has been a consultation process, and our feedback is only part 1 of several parts. I think it should come as much together as we can. I don't hear, we've asked them to not go forward. They can't go forward if we don't provide the necessary feedback that they are required to listen to. It would be nice if the timing were such that both the report from the SOPAS, which analyzes the sediment and the soils and the likelihood of the resuspension of those toxicities in the water, and delves into our emergency response plan. And then in the interim, you guys prepare your emergency response plans in a format that can be shared with them. I mean, I still think there's a lot of more work to do, and I don't see a rush to.
I'm not asking, Russ, I'm saying what do we want to do in terms of time?
I would say have
Wait.
everything come as much together in one piece as possible.
I'm okay with that.
Everybody's not in their head yet.
Yeah. All right, so we'll wait to see what you guys do. Very good. Okay,
When I first went on the board, joint city town, and sitting here and I said, what happens if one of them black cars goes in a river? What do we do? And they're looking at each other. So from that, we had a series of meetings. The Coast Guard come up, sea come up. If one of those cars goes into the river, who comes, what happens, who's in charge? How do you deal with it? Coast Guard says, well, according to federal law, we're in charge, we're responsible, we'll come. Where are you coming from? And goes, I don't know. Yeah, New York Bay. How you in here? Well, we'll come right up on the boats.
yeah, but so we moved ahead though, Bill. They have now been responsive. We've had drills up here now. And so I think through the Hudson 7, we've
That's
advocated
the
hard
key.
to get this done.
That's the key, that's what happened.
All right, so. All right, I'm gonna move on. Does anybody have anything for the Sopas Creek? Paul is not back yet. I don't have an update. Anybody have anything to share?
I have an update.
Please.
Okay, so first, the Hudson 7 got its comments in to respond to the proposed modified IRP, which you all have seen. The deadline for comment of ARWG, so the Ashokan Release Working Group, where the Hudson 7 is a member, we're due on February the 28th. So you got your letter in on time, and now we're waiting for a response by the DEC and the DEP. The ARWG met last Friday. They meet quarterly. And just some key points. One key point for the Hudson 7 to be aware of is that the Delaware Aqueduct is in fact going to be shut down on October the 1st. And the next ARWG meeting is on June the 9th. So Paul will be back by then, where I imagine there'll be a lot of conversations about the closure in the fall. Amanda, I don't know if you have anything you want to add to that. Otherwise, that's all I have for the Hudson 7.
Hi. I think that's everything. I think that's what we've been up to. It's been busy though. Thank you.
That's it.
Yep, the CSX Bridge, there was a deadline last week. Was it, Rebecca? I
Yeah.
lose track of dates and times
This week on Monday.
No, it's Monday. It was on the 12th. That's right. That's right here. For us to, if we wanted to weigh in terms of signing a letter for the NRC to the secretary to ban by rail. So we did do that. We submitted our letter on time and got that in. So I don't know if there's anything more that we need to do at this time other than we logged our concern.
And it cited that bridge that we had cited previously.
I have to go back and pull up the letter.
So
Do you have
the
the letter available, Rebecca?
yeah, it's right. I'll share it. It's actually a letter that was initiated by Secretary Buttigieg. So it's a federal letter and it's a sign-on letter.
That's right.
So we were, the Hudson 7 Riverkeeper, lots of folks were asked to sign on to this letter. There's a link to it. I can, in your agenda, so you could see it. But it was a sign-on letter that was broad in urging, I'm sorry, it's the NRDC urging Secretary Buttigieg and the U.S. Department of Transportation to ban LNG by rail. So it's a pretty big national initiative.
Okay, I didn't know if we were, because I saw you had mentioned, we pointed things out to CSX before, if it was that kind of,
No, it was,
okay.
and just FYI, that bridge was fixed. There's the
Oh,
one.
okay, good.
That bridge was fixed November of last year.
Okay, good.
Yeah, so I'm saying it's the only bridge, but that bridge is fixed.
Good news.
And then cybersecurity, I think everybody who owns the water plant is getting lots of letters in terms of cybersecurity on what to do, what not to do. Some of us, like myself, we have our own cybersecurity built in. I've been in touch with our IT department and said, here's what everybody's recommending. Am I over and above this? And they said, from my point of view, for my water plant, they said yes. So, in terms of this concern, we're addressing the concern, but I think every water plant should be concerned, right? Especially somebody that's more integrated than others and more sophisticated than others.
Yes.
And I don't know what you guys do.
Yeah,
but-
Poughkeepsie has a cybersecurity plan and we keep all of our stuff separate from. That would be accessible.
Dottie, could you speak up a little bit? We're having trouble hearing you.
Sorry, yeah, I was just saying that Poughkeepsie does have a cybersecurity plan in place and we keep everything, separate from any potential outside hackers.
So this communication EPA resources for cybersecurity for the water sector, assessments to be included in sanitary surveys was sent to the Hudson 7 by Dan. I don't know, Dan, if you have anything more to say about this EPA announcement.
Sorry, I don't even remember being the one to forward it, but what Dottie said just makes me wonder if larger treatment plants had been required to come up with these plans previously, and if that and maybe the smaller plants haven't. I don't know if that's the case, but if it is, maybe it's a case where Poughkeepsie could share, might be able to share some knowledge and best practices potentially with the other communities. So just sharing that in case it might be the scenario that we're in.
I'm sure if people, I don't know if I can be the one to say that we would share our plan, but I'm sure Randy, whatever we can share would definitely do so. I do know that we were required to do it by the health department. So my suspicion is that other, facilities would need to do the same.
Right. One of the things I found, though, it's a difference of technology. As Poughkeepsie treatment plant is a lot more sophisticated than the Village of Rhinebeck.
Right.
I can't compare it to the others, but I know from our point of view, on what's available online and what hackers can get into, we're not online. Bottom line. So it's pretty safe. It's like, okay. They can't get in the door, they can't get into the cable. And so our operations and our ability to operate from a Village of Rhinebeck, are not at that sophistication level at this point. So, it's a pretty easy thing for us to do, but except for the external security, which is don't diminish that, because that's just as important as well from somebody walking in and doing something versus the cyber part. So, just my opinion, maybe at some point we'll be there. Our goal is to do a lot of improvements in 2024 that will help that, but we're not there yet. So.
Hey, Gary, before we move on to new business, I'm realizing that that missing from the agenda by accident is the New York State Drinking Water Source Protection Program update from Grant. My apologies.
Yes. Let's bring that on. Grant.
It's no worries. Hello there.
We got a meeting scheduled.
Yes, so quick updates on our end. Mike is out sick today. Hoping for a speedy recovery. We have a meeting scheduled for next Monday, the 20th, March 20th, between 2 and 3 p.m. We're going to finish up going through that quick or the document of potential contaminant sources or major contaminants. Not major. Non-emergency sources of contamination, if that makes sense, right? It doesn't identify. Well, yeah, right. It's not talking about tripping over my words here. Yeah, the potential contaminant source inventory document that we started on in February. So hoping to wrap that up, hoping to share some preliminary ideas of how to make all that data manageable, so that you folks have a better idea of what is out there, in an easily understandable and accessible format. Does that make sense? Cool. And then we'll go over plans to how best to disseminate with the rest of the Hudson 7.
Very good.
And then chiming in on the cybersecurity aspect, I sent out the EPA press release regarding the newfound push for water systems to beef up their cybersecurity. My understanding is that there is going to be funding available in the drinking water state revolving fund for systems to apply for financial assistance, and there should also be technical assistance for water systems as well, and municipal officials. And on the state's end, we have Steve Gladding is now taking on the lead of cybersecurity for New York State DOH.
Thanks, Grant. And
Hey
moving
Gary,
on
this
to
is Nick. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Hey guys, I just wanted to kind of chip in real quick about the cybersecurity part. So yesterday I had my sanitary survey for my district, and you guys are right on. So that is one of their questions, the health department's questions rather. And seems like similar to you, Gary, that I have no processes online. So we're kind of in a good spot there. But yeah, just a heads up for anyone else that might have a sanitary survey coming up.
All right. I've been hearing lots about new EPA standards coming out. I don't know if the rest of you are not. I mean, I don't quite understand it all, but I know that they're coming out with some new PFOA studies for that. Is there anybody here that can talk to this, or is it Dan?
Dan can. Dan, and if he can, I can also, but Dan would be best.
Yeah, I can talk a little bit. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry for being on the phone today. The EPA released a draft proposal, so it's open for public comment and won't be finalized for some time. But that would set standards, federal standards for PFOA and PFOS, which, PFOA was the chemical that affected Hoosick Falls primarily. PFOS is the one that affected Newburgh primarily. These are two of the more common chemicals in this family of so-called forever chemicals because they really don't break down. They tend to be toxic at very, very low levels. And that's what's reflected in the EPA standards that they've set really close to the limit of detection as the limit that would be allowable in drinking water. So 4 parts per trillion is the limit. And I think even a few years ago, nobody was measuring anything in that concentration parts per trillion. But at this point, there's been a lot of science on, the health effects that can occur when people are exposed over a lifetime to these chemicals. And there are a whole range of health concerns that are pretty well documented at this point. And so the EPA standard like that, it's similar basically the way we're thinking about lead, where there's no way to say there's a safe level of exposure. You just try to get rid of as much of it from your drinking water In the case of these chemicals, we're also exposed in other ways through, because they're in so many types of products, food packaging, et cetera. So drinking water is only one of the ways that we can be exposed to them. And this is a way that we're going to be protected with these standards. There are also 4 additional chemicals in this family, this PFAS family, that will also have new federal standards. And I don't understand the way that's calculated completely, but it's like not as simple as adding up the values of each of them and seeing if you're over a threshold. It's a little more complicated, but it's essentially, if you have some combination of those 4 over a certain amount, it would also be a violation. So I think you all have some data for your plants at this point. You could look at where I think the Hudson being variable, it's tests. Sometimes you've seen hits of these, and sometimes the water's free of it. So you could get a sense for whether you're at or over that 4 part per trillion level for either of these chemicals. And I think there's the good. I'll just say one other thing, that the standard treatment for these chemicals is granular activated carbon, GAC, a carbon filter. And the good thing about that kind of filter is it removes an awful lot of trace chemicals. So if you do have to treat to remove these chemicals, you're going to be providing water that's free of a lot of other trace chemicals. And I think that is probably, for a source like the Hudson, a pretty, a wise precaution, because we know there's it's variable and there are various inputs upstream. I hope that covers it. The DEC at the state level also yesterday came out with its own standards that would affect certain industrial wastewater discharges for those same chemicals. So that could affect some industrial facilities in the range of the Hudson 7, but it's a little unclear which facilities might be affected. It will not affect wastewater treatment plants as of right now, even though those also, our sewage plants are a source of these chemicals. They're not being regulated in this rulemaking that the DEC just did. I hope that answers some questions, and I'm happy to try and answer others.
So Dan, this is draft form right now. Do you know the timeline?
If I could comment on that.
I don't know what the time frame is off the top of my head for the comments, but because it's a federal EPA rulemaking, it'll take, I wouldn't anticipate anything will be final for, a year or so. It'll take some time.
Yeah. So if I could chime in here. So PFOS
Yeah,
and PFOA are already under New York state law being regulated. And so every single one of the Hudson 7 water systems have already been testing for PFOA and PFOS. Fairly certain, if I have permission from the village of Rhinebeck and Poughkeepsie to talk about their data results. Gary?
Go ahead.
Okay, yeah. So I've looked through the data for the Hudson 7 systems before regarding PFOA and PFOS. As Dan said, it is generally variable. I think the highest that any of you folks have ever had is around a 3, and most of the time it's a non-detection. And so going back a little bit, so New York State already has 2 of those chemicals under regulation. However, New York State has had the maximum levels for PFOA and PFOS set at 10 parts per trillion, which is a bit higher than the 4 that the EPA is proposing. So state DOH is going to be working with EPA to figure out how best to rectify the situation. And also, New York State was intending to propose limits on a number of other PFAS chemicals, I think later this year. We're not sure what's going to happen there because, some of those things are some of the things that were proposed to be regulated this year are covered by the EPA's proposed regs and some are not. So it's a work in progress. I think the estimate on DOH's end is probably 2026 is the earliest that the EPA's or that the federal standards will kick in. But in any case, you folks already have sampling data, and the sampling data suggests that it is not a concern. For context, the detection level at which laboratories, most laboratories that I can see can report or detect down to is about 2 parts per trillion, between 1.5 and 2 parts per trillion. I don't know if that helps or makes things more confusing.
No, thanks. All right, is there any other new business? Hearing none, I'm going to make a motion to adjourn at 5:45. Second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Enjoy the daylight.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good day.